In an ancient story from Greek mythology, Aurora, the goddess of the dawn, loses her son in a battle. When she hears the news, she rushes to the king of the gods, Zeus, and says,
"Zeus, even though I am not one of your most powerful goddesses, and even though the loss of my son may seem like a minor thing to you, nevertheless my heart is broken. Insignificant as I may be compared to the other gods and goddesses, please grant me two favors, that my son's death be honored, and that it never be forgotten."
Zeus grants her wishes. On the day of her son's funeral, the sky becomes dark. The next day, when dawn awakes to another day, the world was covered with dew. But the dewdrops were not dew. They were Dawn's tears for her dead son. From that day on, according to the legend, every morning Dawn would shed tears for her son. And as she remembered and grieved, the whole world would be reminded of her loss. But here's the most wonderful thing about the story. The daily teardrops did not stop Dawn from rising every morning and doing her job of ushering in a new day, or put her in a helpless or degrading position. Instead, her tears were a daily expression of her sorrow. When people throughout the world saw the dewdrops, they knew that they were Aurora's tears for her dead son. In her tears, they saw their own sorrows. But then they proceeded to go about the day that Dawn had ushered in and got on with their lives. This story reminds us of the importance of our grief and the significance of honoring our loved ones with tears, while also reminding us of the necessity of honoring our loved ones even more by going on with life. Grief invites us to remember, not to forget. Memories are vitally important and yet often neglected. In this culture of ours, where we're frequently encouraged to try not to think or talk about death and dying, this statement is crucial. Grief invites us to remember. Hey, don't take my word for it. If you're a grieving person, ask yourself this question. Am I thinking more about the person since they died, or am I thinking less about them? I think almost unanimously, grieving people would say that they're thinking about their loved one all the time. It's like they can't get them out of their mind. That happens for a reason. It is grief inviting us to remember. Sadly, we live in a culture that seems to encourage us to forget. The attitude seems to be that if we pretend that everything is normal, somehow we won't have to face the harsh realities that are part of a life-threatening situation or a death. People somehow decide not to talk about it and act as if nothing has happened. Surely this is the ultimate denial, for something has happened. Circumstances have meant that life has changed and indeed will never be the same again. Memories can help us come to terms with a situation in several ways. Retelling the story can help to make it believable. Often when we hear bad news or some crisis happens, our initial reaction is to say, "I don't believe it." Such is the shocking impact that our mind seems unable to absorb it. Every time we hear the story again or have it confirmed in some way, it becomes more real, more believable. Memories help us put things into perspective. When we're in a difficult situation, we're inclined to think only of that situation. It's constantly on our minds. Often, all we can see is our current situation and the misery associated with it. memories help us see another picture, often a much happier one. Let me illustrate this important point this way. In the days after my wife died, all I could think about was her death. All I could see was finding her on the floor of our kitchen, seeing her at the hospital or at the funeral home. And these, believe me, were not happy memories. Many times when we think about our loved ones, the only picture that comes to mind are images of the death. Or even more difficult, we recall them in the last weeks or months of an illness when they were suffering. And that's all we can think about. It's not a pretty picture. And yet it's often the one, sometimes the only one that we see. So whenever someone mentions the person or the situation, automatically we remember the death. And that's difficult for us, and it's emotional. Now that picture cannot be erased. However, it can become part of a larger photograph album.
When I'm working with grief groups, one of the things that we always do, usually the second or third week into the group, is have people bring the picture of the person who has died. And I always tell them, I don't want you to talk at all about the death. I want you to talk about the life of this person. And I think that's one of the things that's so healing, is that you get beyond seeing them as a sick person or in a tragic kind of a situation. And if you can go back to some of the memories of when you first knew that person, or when you first had your child, or when your son was born and when he was in junior hockey or something, those kinds of memories are the ones that I think can begin to sustain you. But it takes folks so long to get beyond those awful visions of what the person looked like when they were dying, or if it was a tragic event. That's so hard to get that. I found it very hard, because I was with my husband when he died, and I found it very hard to get that image of what it was like when he actually physically died out of my head, and I would come back to that a lot. So it took a while.
I realized we had turned the corner with memories, because in the beginning everybody just talks about all the good things. Oh, he was so wonderful, and he did this. And now his friends will say, you remember when? And they just tell some of the awful stories, and they feel real comfortable now that, that we can go back and banter just like when he was alive. And you think that, and even with my daughters, they would be very teary for many things. But now, like my husband, when he would be angry, he would always make his lip tight. And my youngest daughter will say, oh my God, I'm making my lip tight just like Daddy, like wouldn't you know I would have inherited that. So, and that just, I think that was a big corner for us, that now he's not sort of godlike anymore. He's just a normal person.
When we can relive our memories, it helps us to see that there is much for which to be thankful. It helps us to reconcile some of the situations that have affected us for years. There's always more than one way to look at any situation.
Since my dad died, I find that a lot of things that happen just in day-to-day life remind me of him. So I can be thinking, oh, Dad would have thought this about getting gas in the car, or Dad would have said this about the news. Dad would have had a comment to make about the change in Britain's Prime Minister. Dad would have had a say about most things that were going on, and it comes to mind all the time, really.
We used to love to cook together. The memories I had with her, which was special, were we used to cook together, we used to take long walks together, we used to share a bottle of wine together. We used to love just bantering with each other and about everything and anything. I do go emotionally through the different stages of life, and what she did give to me, rather than what is left with my life, and what we have accomplished, what we have shared. That I try to reason with myself is the memories which we had, not what we do not have.
We have to put the death in the context of the life. That's what's going to help soften the difficult memories of the death. Helping someone remember the better days doesn't deny the present reality. It merely serves to put it in a more meaningful and gentler context. Life is difficult right now, but it has not been all bad. Remember when this happened? Do you recall that happy moment or that humorous incident? These better memories help to put life into perspective, good and bad, happy and sad, enabling the person to come to a better place of reconciling the fact that that's life. Life should not be defined by this one tragic event. So here is an important signpost. We must let the light of the years shine on the event rather than letting the event cast its shadow on the years. Memories help us to broaden our outlook and see that sometimes there is another way to view things. These may be difficult days, but there have been other days, good and better days. Reliving the memories of those days helps bring the darkness of these current days into a different light.